Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Deer's Feet. I'm changing things up a little for this episode. It's a podcast episode. So I hope you still find value in it. And of course, my goal is always to point you to Jesus, to the one who can give you relief and peace and comfort in the time of storm and always. Today, I'm going to be talking about my testimony about my finances because I know it's that time of year, it's April, and tax season is come and gone for some because some people are filing late. And I know as Christians, we're getting better, I believe, but a lot of times we don't talk really about money. So, but the Lord talks about finances a lot in the Bible, and He wants us to be, smart with our finances, and He will help us with our finances. He wants us to give everything to Him, and so that includes our finances. As you know, if you're new to this, my podcast is all about my journey out of depression to Christ through Christ and years of major depression and anxiety. And when you're in that state in your mind and in your space, it affects everything, including your finances. And God wants us to be whole. Okay. And I'm just going to talk about, I'm going to give you my testimony first. Um, let's start with how I got into debt. And just so you know, I um at one point in my life, during the midst of my depression, I was in thousands, and I mean thousands of dollars in of credit card debt. And the way I got into that debt was my mindset. So I I didn't realize at that time that I was actually depressed, like I actually had a diagnosis. I just thought that I was very lonely and very, even though I had a lot of friends and a lot of family, I was very lonely and very just wanted to cry most of the time. And I did a lot when I would go to bed. Um and I just didn't know what was going on with me. So one of the things I started doing was once I all of this happened when I graduated from nursing school. So I'm a registered nurse. I have been for 30, this year will be 30 7 years. Yeah, 30. Wow. Yeah, I think 37 years. Anyway, I graduated in the 80s during a time when nursing was really booming. I think it still is. I don't know. I've been in the business so long, but um, I could get a job at the drop of a hat, and they were paying very well. So I took that newfound what I deemed as freedom, and I took it and I started buying stuff like clothes, mainly clothes. My thinking was if I looked better on the outside, then I would feel better and people would like me. Although many people liked me, I just didn't see it. And I would not feel the way I was feeling, which was sad most of the time, even though I was laughing and talking to people. On the inside, I really felt really I was in a dark place. And I hid it a lot with outward things. But I didn't realize this at the time. I really thought I was doing something that would help me. So yeah, so I went and I bought and I bought and I bought. And I was going to church. I'm a Christian. I was a Christian then. And well, I grew up a Christian. I had not given my heart fully to the Lord yet, and I didn't realize that. Anyway, that's another story for a different day. But so before I would go to church, I go to church on Saturday on Sabbath. I would on every Friday, pretty much every Friday, it were not many Fridays that I missed. I would go shopping and I would buy something to wear to church. And it'd be a whole outfit. Sometimes it would be shoes and I just knew that one day, I was going to feel really great. And I got a lot of compliments on how I looked and everything, but nothing was changing. But I just didn't put two and two together thinking this is not the answer to what's going on with you, which going on with you is deep inside, is not outwardly. So instead of thinking that, what I thought was, okay, I'm just not doing this right. So I just need to do more. I need to step up my game. So I bought more. I actually, went on a lot of trips. I traveled a lot throughout the US and I went on a few trips abroad. And I always went with friends. I never went by myself. And so I traveled. I even got to the point where would purchase trips for others. I would pay for others' trips, including hotel and food and things like that. That's when I discovered credit cards. I was like, oh, okay, I can just do this and I'll just pay it off later at some point, whatever. Um, Not knowing anything. I didn't grow up being taught about money. I grew up in in a poor household, and we didn't really talk about money except that there wasn't a lot of it, and we could only do certain things, and we better be good with what we have, and that was it. So anyway, I had all this newfound like career that paid well, and so I used my money to buy clothes, go on trips, help others go on trips, and pay for everything I could. And of course, that got me into debt. And before I realized it, because I didn't at the time really look at everything. I know you guys, I mean, this all sounds really kind of, I don't know, a little, I don't want to say crazy because I don't want to label anybody who might be even in this spot right now. But it just sounds like, how can you do that? But when you're in a certain spot in your life, especially if it's a dark time, then you're going to do some things that later on you will look back and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. But when you're in it, everything seems right to you. Everything seems normal. And so I wasn't really looking at my credit card statements except to pay the monthly because one thing I was taught as I grew up was not to have bills. So I paid the minimum payment every month. I didn't realize that was getting me even more into debt due to interest. I didn't know about interest. So I was paying the minimum every month. I really thought I was in a good place because every time my credit card um bills came, because one credit card turned into two, I think I may have ended up with three at one point. But I paid the minimum each time. I'm like, oh yeah, I can afford this. So anyway, so I did that, and I was just going along my day and just, every day just trying to be happier and figuring, the way I'm living one day it's gonna all pay off, no pun intended. So the first turning point, I had two turning points that I'm going to tell you guys about. The first one was I was still I'm a nurse, and so I was at work one day and I had an encounter with a coworker. I talked about this in another, I think in one of my videos. Um, and he and I were working. I used to work in a NICU, which is a neonatal intensive care. So it was intensive care for babies. And he was a respiratory therapist, and I was the nurse, and we all worked very closely because the babies were so sick, and we always had to have a respiratory therapist on shift with us. So he and I were actually working with a baby, and for some reason, and I know now it's the Holy Spirit, the topic of finances came up, and he actually was talking to me about retirement savings and everything. So if I didn't know anything about interest or credit cards and everything, you have a good idea that I had no idea about retirement and all of that. I didn't even pay attention to that because I was still a young nurse. Um, and so I just figured, why would I even look at that stuff when I'm onboarding at at the hospitals I was working in? And he completely put me on a different thinking path because he taught me about, in a very short time that we were speaking, he taught me things like, you're not too young to start thinking about this, and how he explained a couple of things about how if you do this, you would have this much at the end, but if you don't do this, you would have this much. It was something that made me go, oh, because I felt like I was always good with money. Now, even though I was getting into all this credit card debt, my checkbook, this was back in the days of checkbooks, there were no electronic medical records. There was nothing electronic at that time. And so everybody had a checkbook, and my checkbook was balanced to the T, to the penny, every single pay period. Like I would sit down and write down everything, right? Every single pay period. And if I was one penny off, which was rare, or two pennies off, you best believe I found that one or two pennies. And I got my checkbook correct. So I really thought I was on a good path. So then he taught me some things, and I just started from that moment on reevaluating my, I guess, relationship with money is what I should say. So the action plan that I took is I started reevaluating my relationship with money, and one of the first things I thought was I need to get out of this debt because I was so good with my credit card, I mean with my checkbook balancing, looking at these credit card bills, it really started to turn my stomach. I mean, I really started paying more attention to these balances. Still not um understanding really about about the interest and all of that, but I just couldn't take the balances anymore. So what I did, the action plan that I did was I know I talked to you guys about taking baby steps outside of your comfort zone. So if you're in this position, that's the first thing that I did that I recommend. And one of the things, so where I worked a 12-hour shift, which was seven. So it was called a 12-hour shift, but it was called, I forgot, but it was, we did 6 weeks on nights, which was 7 p to 7 a, and then 6 weeks on days. So we rotated. That's what it was called. It was rotating shifts, and everybody did it unless you had been there a long time, and then you could stay on days if you wanted, because of course most of us want to stay on days, but because I didn't want to work nights. So, one of the things that I started thinking about, and another friend who was a colleague that I worked with also had told me that she was in some credit card debt at one point, or some debt, and she just stopped working the day shift for a while because there was a big difference per pay period for per paycheck when you work nights, because you had this night shift differential. So you got $200 to $300 more per paycheck, which really adds up. So reluctantly, but because I wanted to get out of this debt, I went to my manager and I said, I just want to stay on nights for a while until further notice, which we could do. So they were like, fine, because they never had to ask anybody, do you want to go to days instead of Charmaine? That was easy to do. So I did that, and I worked night shift only. And the next action item I took was, instead of paying the minimum, I paid really large chunks of money every month whenever my statement came. I just started putting chunks of money into it. All that money I was gaining working night shift, I was literally putting it into my credit card. Um, which in turn forced me not to be able to do all the fun stuff that I was doing at the time, like jumping in my car or jumping on a plane and taking a trip or paying for somebody else. So that kind of forced me to do it. It was hard. It really was because one of my strengths or one of my love languages is gift giving. Um, so it was hard, and working nights is, for me at least, is never easy, but I just knew I just had to get out of that credit card debt. Um, so I did those three things. I worked nights only, I paid big chunks of money to the credit cards, and that forced me to cut back on my spending, which I was still fine. I was I was still fine. So it's something that was long overdue. So I did that. And I was starting to see headway, which would encourage me to keep going because I started seeing these balances coming down. Oh, the other thing I did, I just remembered, I was talking to, I think it might have been, it was a friend or a cousin or somebody, and I learned about through this person, um, consolidating your cards into one with a low interest rate. This is when I started learning about credit card interest, you know, rates. So I thought, oh, okay, because I'm this is gonna sound weird, but I'm actually very good at in math, and in school I I always got really high grades in math. So you would think that this wouldn't happen to me, but it happens to the best of us. So when it's explained to me, the things about interest and stuff, I catch on pretty quickly. That's just a blessing, a gift that the Lord has given me. I'm good with numbers. I'm not good. I wasn't good with spending those numbers at the time, but I am good with numbers. So I understood it. So I was like, oh, so I consolidated I'm pretty sure it was three cards into one, this new card with this lower interest rate, which meant my balance was going down even quicker. So I was very, very, very excited. So I did that for a time. It took me a while, but I did it. And I paid off my credit card debt. And I was able to go back to my rotating shift, which was days and nights. And that was like, that was really exciting for me because I was so tired of working nights. Um, and I didn't care at that time about the money, the differential, losing that part of that because, of course, I was doing 6 weeks of each. So I was just ready not to work nights all the time anymore. So I was doing that, and then, I still didn't have a mindset about money that I should have had. I was still using my credit card as kind of a future thing instead of as this is what money I have and using it as cash, like I do now. But so I saw the debt starting to come back, but not as much as before. And I'm, trying to think how I could change things. And then turning point number two, I had a very good friend who told me about a new budget. Now, for me, I had never budgeted it because I always saw budgets as, oh, they're restrictive. I'm not going to get to do the fun things I want to do. I can just do this in my head. I'm going to pay off this debt, and then I'm just going to keep in my head what I can, uh, uh, what I can afford and what I can't afford. I don't need to write it down in a budget because that's just kind of nerdy and just too restrictive. So my friend, she hooked me to, was telling me about this new thing she was doing. She actually didn't use the word budget. She used the word it was this budget, but it was called a MAP, which is M as in Mary, A as in Apple, P as in Paul. And that was an acronym for money allocation plan. And it was actually put together by this, I believe it was a Christian couple. But anyway, it was all, now we're still all pen and paper because nothing's really yeah, nothing is what do you call it? It's nothing is electronic still. So she told me about this map, and what it was it was a paper which was it had one, two, three, four sides. So it was folded down the middle, and it had two, it was front and back of two, of the whole side. and it was just these boxes that were empty. And then you fill in. So basically, what you're doing is you're giving all of your money a job. So at the top, you had, how much you're bringing in. You could do it per pay period, per month, however you wanted to do it. But you write in the amount you're going to put on that paper for that period. And each little box you're going to put in, say, school or um, the electric bill, the light, the water bill, the whatever bills you have, you're going to put it there and you're going to put an amount that you start with. And then there was a section to put when the bill came, and then you're going to put the amount the bill was, and then you're going to total it up. And so each box you had money in it, and then you had balances. So either you put enough money in it, and then when the bill came, you had enough money in there. It was either just enough, so your balance would be zero, which would be good for that period of time, or you didn't have enough, and so your balance would be a negative, or you had allotted more, so you have a plus. So if you had a negative, you could pull from another box if you had some extra money left over. So the good thing I liked about this was you could use your box for anything. And she taught me how to, made me think about, oh, I can have a box for my extracurricular stuff that I like to do, like going out to dinner or getting my hair done or manicures on to after I put in each box for my bills. So I thought, wow, this is great. So I said, well, let me try it. Well, long story short, I ended up filling that thing out for every pay period. At the beginning of every pay period, I had it completed and used that to the point where I stopped taking my checkbook out of the house even because I would throw that in my purse, and but I used this paper instead. And man, it was that I used that thing for over 10 years. And when I say that was the thing that made me get to the point I am now, which is debt free, that was it. Let me tell you, because it made me really think more about my money, where it was going, and how I was using it. It really changed my mindset, and it showed me that a budget, and then I was able to start calling it a budget because that's exactly what it was. It's not restrictive, it's more freeing because then you're not wondering where something's coming from or why you got hit with a certain bill and didn't have enough money. So it was so freeing to me. So I just fell in love with it. In fact, one time my friend who introduced me to it, like years later, she and I were out and I pulled it out, I think it was, and she was like, "You still use that thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, don't you?" And she said she didn't, but she had no idea I was still using it because it had been years. I said, "No, this is what keeps me on track." And so the only reason I stopped using it after, many years was because that's when things were starting to get electronic. A lot of my bills at were starting to be, I was starting to make them put them as to be automatically paid and taken out my checking and all that kind of stuff. I was starting to use that system because I like ease of everything. And I actually reached out to the creators of this map, and they weren't going to make it electronic. And I don't really remember why, but I was just so sad because that was the first place I started. I wanted this budget to be electronic because I would have kept it if it was, but it wasn't. So I had to eventually put it to the side. But I still have all of my little all of my papers. It's so funny. I have them in a big, big, big pile. Um, but that was like the best thing for me. So, my action plan for that map was I gave all my money jobs. I put savings in there because I wasn't really saving good. So I put that as one of the jobs. Um I put all my extracurricular that I wanted to do as jobs, and and I made sure that my, bills were the first job. So if my bills weren't paid, if I didn't have enough money, if I was deficient in something that was a bill, then, that extracurricular, I was pulling from the extracurricular to put in there until I got to a point where I wasn't deficient in the bills. And then whatever I had left over, I was using for savings. I had paid off my credit card again, and um starting to change my mindset about that. And then just everything had its place. Um and that just completely shifted my mindset to even where it is now. I mean, that was a huge game changer. So as a result, as I said, I am debt free. I have been for over 15 years. Um and I actually I use credit cards as cash. Now, I actually have more than one, but they're paid off every month. And if you guys want to hear that story, how that came about and how I navigate that, then, drop a comment and let me know. But yeah, so I've been debt free, and it's very freeing, and I use a budget. And when I say budget, I still use a budget. I just created an electronic one. And so what what I would suggest, of course, is that you use a budget. And I want to say, the Lord was with me throughout this whole journey because he knew what he had for me. He knows what he has for us. And living buried in debt is not what he has for us. So, and I know that, um, of course, you're going to use credit cards for certain things, and I'm not against them. And like I said, I use them now. Um, but yeah, being in debt and deep in debt, like I said, I was thousands of dollars in credit card debt. It's just not his plan for us because you're paying you're paying for stuff that somebody else is doing. You're just it's not benefiting fitting you. And but the Lord was he can be with you just like he was with me to show me a path out and to show me the light and freedom. And with the budget, what I have learned, because it's a learning process, do I have hiccups? Yes. But I learned to celebrate my wins. I learned to f- don't beat myself up when, I overspend somewhere and have to fix it. And I learned to fix and move stuff. So when I say fix stuff with a budget, you create it, you review it, and you review it regularly, and you tweak it. That's the part, the reviewing it regularly is the part that I have to make sure that I do, because a lot of times I have to remind myself, review my budget. Case in point, um, a few months ago, somebody was telling me, remember to review your budget. And I was like, oh, I've been so good at it lately. I'm sure it's fine. And I know it's the Holy Spirit, of course, that sit down and review your budget. You haven't done it in a while. So I did. And I had been for 10 months paying $9 a month for a book that I got, an electronic book that I got, that I had thought I returned as soon as I got it because I never looked at it, and I realized I wasn't going to look at it. And I figured I had only paid $9 for it, but it had been $9 a month for 10 months. So I was like, what? So thankfully, though, I called the people and I told them what happened. And I guess they could see that I never even opened the book. So they actually refunded me half of my money, which nothing but the grace of God, because they did not have to do that. So that, and then there was another thing that I found that was actually $99, and it's almost the same amount, because the other one was for, I think it was 10 months, so that ended up being 99, but I only had to pay half of that. This one was 99, that was done. It was taken out. I thought I had it was something that I tried And then I thought I had canceled it before that the first time that they charge you. And of course I didn't. So of course I went in there and canceled it. So yeah, always go in, especially if, if you have an Apple or whatever phone you have, go into your subscription section and make sure there are no lingering, now that everything is electronic, there are other places sometimes you have to look. For me, it's that subscription section. I have to make sure there's nothing in there that I meant to cancel that has not been canceled and I'm paying for. And yeah, so make your budget, create your budget, review it regularly, and tweak it. If you need to tweak it, sometimes I change things around because, okay, I'm no longer giving to this charity. I'm going to go to another one, or I'm going to increase this amount or decrease that amount and put something else over here. I mean, you're always, looking at it and you're staying familiar with it. And that way, and also, yeah, your credit card statements, I have found the fraud on that a couple of times. And it's little ones, but I guess that's what happens now, that people will put something, a small charge, like under $20 or something, like even $10, just to see if you miss it or if you catch it, and if you don't, then they make it bigger and stuff. Anyway, I've heard that kind of scam can happen. So that happened to me a couple of times, and um thank the Lord, he made me look and I found it, and everything was fixed. So, but yeah, that's just my testimony. I hope that, and if it helps you or anybody that that may be in some credit card debt, or maybe in a dark place and thinking that buying will bring them out, and paying for everything for everybody will, make you have fun. And you could have fun in the moment, but always look deep inside. And if you're new to my channel, I like I said, I grew up in a Christian home, but I actually walked away from God because I thought that he was the reason for my darkness after many, many years, and everything that I tried, like, you know, paying for everything and buying all this stuff. Everything I was trying was not working. I just figured, okay, he's the problem. So I walked away. And then I came back, giving him an ultimatum saying, okay, you have one more chance, because he was pulling me back. And I came back, and with my whole heart, which is what I try to do daily. Which I aim to do daily. So, if you're there, God cares about every part of you, every aspect of your life, including your finances. And when you go to him and present and everything to him, now what I do is I try to remember every morning when in my praying that I surrender not only myself, my body, my family, but my finances also, and my projects, my dear's feet, everything to him, um, to work out according to his will. So, um, if you found this helpful, give me a like, a comment, and please subscribe and share this with others. And um, I'll be back again soon. And thanks for listening. Bye.